Hey there, wanted to get on and do a quick live this evening on a great topic that comes up often. And it's funny because I see this out here a lot. Um, so it's this perception that those of us who are committed to traveling, I guess traveling this conscious spiritual path, or however you want to call it, right? Doing energy work or just being consciousness teachers and stuff like that, that we at some point never get angry, that it's all rainbows and unicorns and there's nothing ever to come up in our life that brings in conflict or anything like that. So I want to tell you with all honesty, because I have people say to me all the time, "You're so chill, I just can't imagine you getting angry." And I laugh and say, of course I get angry. I'm still having a human experience. I'm still in a human body. And I'm going to break it to you, but we all, no matter where we are, no matter how, polished we come across in terms of consciousness and stuff like that, we all have moments. We all have moments when we get angry. And the funniest thing is that, the people who are closest to us are the ones who tend to see it. And as we progress along. Now here's the thing. As we progress along in terms of our consciousness path, we come to a place where we just do anger differently. And it's not that we don't do anger, it's that we do it differently than, what is standard. This is really important. I'm guided to talk about this. This is a really important topic to talk about because we have so much chaos in the world right now. We have so much bubbling up from the depths of the shadows to become, to come to the surface, and it's all productive and important. And when we pull judgment out of it, it's like just to see what's there and to see how we can deal with it and change it ultimately. So I wanted to tell you because all right, so number one, I absolutely do get angry. You can ask my husband. But I have a different way of dealing with it that I wanted to share with you today. Because these are the things that I talk about and work with people on, that, that I walk my talk, I'm committed to it. This is how I experience it, which allows me to be in a better state of mind more often, more regularly, to keep myself more, at peace and calm and centered and in detached observance, which then allows me to then be fully much more present. And so this is how it all sort of relates, and it rolls down the line. So we are in this place of a lot of changes going on. We have a lot of changes going on in the world. A lot of people are agitated. So there are a couple of things to think about. Number one, the perspective I always have is that nobody gets us angry but ourselves, right? Just like nobody makes us happy but ourselves. That's a discussion for a different day. But when we take that full self-responsibility, right? And I know that no matter what somebody else has done, and no matter how my ego wants to project it onto them, the only reason something has triggered me into anger is because of something that's inside of me to look at. And when I came to that realization, it changed the way I dealt with anger and how I dealt with everybody around me and everybody I interact with and how I interacted. So, and then what happens is when we do that again, it then allows us to experience it differently and in a lesser fashion, in a less projective fashion, in a way that we're not screaming and stomping our feet. Although sometimes I've had that and I've had those moments. I absolutely have had those moments. I had a couple of years ago a full blown out temper tantrum where throwing things and yeah, yep, that was a pretty big one. But it was huge and awesome for me because it helped me to change a lot of stuff within myself. So let me tell you, let me just go through with you for a couple minutes on what it is to look at differently and how to experience anger differently. Because I feel like we perpetuate anger by continuing to project it onto others because of what they say or what they do, and to judge it and judgment and all that kind of stuff. So this is a really thickly layered rows. People call them onions, but there's some negative connotation with onions sometimes. I like using roses. Anyhow, so number one, what I do is I first recognize when the anger comes up in me, right? So sometimes we get lost in it for a couple minutes. Absolutely. I've had those moments. Like I said, I had that big temper tantrum. That was a big one. And I have to, yeah, I commit myself to seeing it in myself, right? So even as that big old dragon's coming up from the depths to want to just breathe fire on whoever it is that's in the way, I do my best to step back and take a breath. Now, this sounds really remedial, and it is, but many of us just don't do it. Literally, when you feel that coming up, I call it the dragon coming up from the depths. I step back, take a breath, and go, okay, I'm just going to maybe five breaths, deep ones, right? There's something called box breathing you can do, right? So you could take a breath in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold it for 4. And that takes your mind off of that for a minute. What that does is it breaks that moment of wanting to attack. What happens when we attack is we completely want to put all that anger onto somebody else instead of take responsibility for it within ourselves. And I'm saying this is what I do, right? So, and I'm thinking about, okay, say my husband has done something that gets me really angry, because again, people closest to us are the ones that trigger us the most, right? I will feel it coming up, and it's sort of like when we feel like we have to throw up, right? You feel it coming up, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take a breath. Deep breath, right? Because when we want to throw up, what do? We want to get some fresh air, right? We want to take some deep breaths. So I take a deep breath. That's the first step. And so we miss this. A lot of times we miss this. We go right into, I want to change this. I want to, retreat. It's not retreating. It's taking a moment to step back and breathe. Because then you can have observation, and you start having this observation in yourself of, okay, why am I angry? Why am I so angry? And the ego is going to go crazy, right? At first, it'll go blah, 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 because they did this and they did this, and I hate when they did this, and da 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 da. So here's what I do. Number one is I do retreat from the conversation. If I'm in the conversation, I say, I need to take a step back. And yeah, I don't want to talk about this right now. And that, though, is a commitment of self-observation, and I'm not projecting it onto the other person. So when I do that, I will sit with it. And what I do, because I know the ego so badly wants to get crazy when I do have those moments, right? And they do become rarer, more and more rare as I go along. But the ego wants to do that. I'll step back and be like, okay, I'll give you an hour. Depends on how big it is. I'll give you an hour. Do it. Go for it. But I don't take it out. My commitment is I don't take it out on anybody else. I don't take the anger out on anyone else. I let it just roll. Sometimes I journal. Journaling is great when I'm angry. I always say anybody is welcome to read my journal, except, just you can't be, I can't be held responsible for any feelings you might have if you see something that you don't like or whatever, because this is mine. It's for me. And it's only to let the ego verbalize and get it out without projecting it onto somebody else, right? Even if in the thoughts I'm not doing it, like verbally or physically or anything like that. So that's the first step. Number two is then so I give myself time to let it come up, and I sit and I'm present with it. So let me tell you a little bit about presence. And I do talk about presence a lot. But this is very important. It's sort of like the analogy of driving through a neighborhood, right? So you drive through a neighborhood every day and you don't see what's around you, right? And then like one time you're driving through the neighborhood and you're a passenger in the car, right? And then you go, oh, I didn't see that house. That house has always been there, or that tree's always been there. I've never noticed, and I drive through this every day. Well, then think about walking through the neighborhood and how you would see maybe flower gardens that you never see, or you notice certain grasses or flowers or trees or something in a house or whatever that catches your attention, right? And so this is what presence is all about, right? So this is why this step when we do energy work or clearing or shifting work or whatever is so important, but it's important for everybody. It's everyone to take a step back and breathe in that moment of anger and commit yourself to saying, I'm going to let it simmer, because when I sit in the middle of my anger, I see things that I might not see before. And this is why it's very productive for me to like journal or whatever, if and when that comes up. Because then sometimes when the words come out on the paper, I look at them and go, oh, wow, there's a belief I didn't realize I had. Or there's an expectation I didn't realize I was holding that was unfair in this situation, or unrealistic, or based on something else or another belief, right? So, like, that's how it starts to unfold, right? And this is where the self observance comes into play. Because when I do that, when I sit there and I go through these, these thoughts and whatever, then I can see what it is that's coming up. See, this is a great tool. So it's gone from we never have anger, right? Because here's the thing. Many of us who do this work and we get out here and we talk about this stuff up on social media and everything, again, rainbows and unicorns, but and then behind the scenes, they are embarrassed or hide the fact that we have angst or anger or anything come up, because it's not the proper way of doing it. But the thing is, by saying that and by hiding that, we're like creating a false like reality, right? A false expectation. Then people start judging themselves because they still have anger, but we still do, right? All of us still do. It's just, it's different and differently expressed, differently experienced, right? So anyway, back to the what I do. So if it's something that comes up, I'll journal about it. I'll give myself like a little time, and then I will ask myself, like when I look at that, then I'll step back and I'll look at the thoughts that came up. And I'll say, so what is that about within me? Like, why did that trigger me so badly? And that's where I do what I call a why exercise. Like, why did that trigger me? And I will continue asking the why exercise through multiple layers until I get down to what I call the question of self-responsibility, statement of self-responsibility. Because when I'm saying, because they do this and I get so angry when they do this, well, then I'll say, so why? Why do I care? Why do I care if they do this? Well, then, until you get to the place of, well, when this happens, I feel this. I feel this when this happens. And that's the self-responsibility, and that's the trigger, right? So then you can productively work with it. And it becomes a self-help tool and a self-management tool. So then it's like, oh, okay. Well, then you realize it's not about anybody else ever. It's only about us, as it always is. And then you can shift it energetically. And that's the thing about having the knowledge of how to shift things energetically, how to feel them and know them and where they are and what to do about it, because there's so many different ways of doing that. But doing that first step is so important, because then it also changes how we interact with people, because then eventually people stop feeling like they're going to be your target if you get angry. And they realize that, just like if I trigger you, that it's all you, and if you trigger me, it's all me. And so it's two interactions in every interchange. So then shift the vibration, let it go. But usually when I can take that time and just observe, I see what it's coming from. And almost immediately, like 90% of the time, when I see where it's coming from and I see that self-responsibility in it and why I'm triggered from that situation, that dissolves it pretty quickly without even needing to consciously do a lot of like energy work or shifting work or whatever. But then that sort of is the icing on the cake, because then I know how to shift that. So that's how it goes. Now, again, I want to tell you, that's like, we all get angry. This is part of our human experience. This is part of all the stuff we're resolving, which we're doing at this incredible like warp speed. It's like the speed of thought. We're just changing so dramatically. So that's why all this stuff is coming up so rapidly and so hugely in the world around us. So the better adept we become at managing that within ourselves, the better we do with each other, and then the faster all this other stuff resolves. Many people ask me like, what's the answer to all the craziness in the world? Well, this is sort of the beginning. Anyway, So I just wanted to give you that little tip on the fact that yes, I do get angry. I absolutely do. I mean, but what happens is because of that self responsibility, usually if I start to even feel it simmering, I will step back really quickly now, right? It's rare that it comes up out of nowhere, that dragon. But if that dragon comes up, by the way, the other part of this is when I see it all, when I look at it, then I have to commit, then I have committed to accepting it without judgment, without judging myself for the feelings that I have, but accepting them and then having gratitude for the situation, having gratitude for the person that brought that trigger up so that I can thank them etherically, energetically for helping me see things that I had hidden in the cracks and crevices of beliefs, expectations, and feelings, emotions that might not have been serving me in the most advantageous way. And it is everything that comes up for us, no matter how much of a jerk somebody is around us, because when we're fine and at peace within ourselves, nothing's going to trigger us. So anybody can be however they are, and we will be completely fine with that. So that was really like the point I wanted to make. Number one was that yes, we do absolutely still get pissed, and number two, it's just managing it differently. And number three, that it's for all of us to manage it differently. And it's really just a rehabilitation of how we deal with these emotions than how we act. Because then what happens is I don't hold it. I don't hold it in my energy field. I let it go. I take self-responsibility for it so that I'm not trying to project it and like push it out on anybody. So have a thought about that. And these are the things that I work with. And I have an awesome program coming up that is to help everybody rehabituate with this. No matter how advanced we are always like looking at that commitment and looking at that within ourselves. But anyhow, in the meantime, like, subscribe. Come and join my Facebook group, the Up-Leveling Community, where we talk about all this kind of stuff. And I have a lot of really fun stuff planned on talking about there. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks.